Hey everybody, this is Pete and Bob from Underdog Garage.
Welcome back to Underdog Garage and to our first Underdog Garage Raw.
Yeah, I guess we can officially call it Underdog Garage Raw. So the premise behind this, and this is the first kind of run we've done at this, essentially when I was filming Robert doing the bodywork in part 6 of the Miata Rust Repair Series, there was a lot of footage that I really wanted to put in the video, but I felt that, for the sake of time, that I wanted to keep things cut down. So in the spirit of all that good footage, we decided that we were going to create a raw video, very unedited, very unpolished, and just kind of talk over it. Robert, being the body expert he is, can offer some key points and advice and kind of talk through what he's doing. So a lot more footage in this. So I'll stop yakking now and we can get into it. You ready, Robert?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
Now, one disclaimer here, folks. I am a professional amateur, just so you know. I love bodywork. It's a lot of fun. I love the transformative power of bodywork and taking an old rusty relic and a thing that's dented up and making some magic happen. But I am by no means a pro. But that's okay. I have more fun because it's not a job. It's not like I have to be a production guy and knock it out. What I'm doing here, if you've watched the other video, I'm just putting some tape marks on to remind myself where this... Remind me, Pete. I can never remember. What the hell am I supposed to call that piece of plastic there?
Kick plate. There you go. Good job.
Big black plastic thing. Just to remind me that I don't need to go down in there and overwork this area.
And the whole idea is, again, to mark so that you're not sanding on an area or filling with an area that's going to be covered. And
now, to define that, all that area will get sanded and primed and painted, but not to the degree that finish work.
Right.
What I'm doing is I'm just protecting an area that I'm not going to be sanding and doing any repair work on, so I tape that leading edge to protect it from sand marks, scuff marks, and it also gives me a line to blend when I'm past the prime point and I'm getting ready to put base and clear coat on that area. Again, it's a lesson that I learned the hard way because on the first project that I didn't paint those areas, and then I had to go back and repair and do more work to remove the sanding scratches.
And so what are you doing here?
I'm just scuffing up that, because when you put that panel completed that, you put the primer on it. So I'm just scuffing it to get some good new tooth on it. Ready to lay down some, get the panel clean so I can lay down some mud.
So the tooth gives it kind of a gripping surface for the Bondo connect to.
I've got really good quality Bondo, but I want to make sure that thing is completely clean and totally scuffed up where the Bondo's going.
And now you're kind of just tacking the panel out.
Yeah, just wiping the dust off, getting it clean. Folks, you'll notice that big, sort of like a 3x5 little yellow patch there. That's the VIN code, and it's got the different date of manufacturer information on it. And I always to preserve the OEM look, I always tape those up very, very accurately. I'll over tape them and use a razor blade to cut them back to the exact label size, so that that stays in place during the whole entire painting process. It only comes off at the end. And I do that so that I never get any paint on that label, and it preserves the OEM look.
Yeah, because that's what we're really trying to do, right? Is like maintain
to maintain the OEM look.
And so here you're getting your Bondo set up for the first round.
Playing in the mud. And granted, this stuff stinks, but not as bad as some of the cheaper stuff that I've used. And I've used different body fillers, but this Evercoat Rage is not a sponsor.
So what is that what is that blue stuff you just
The
put
blue
in?
stuff is the activator, and that's basically a peroxide base. Make sure, now, you can't tell it is a little cool here in the garage that evening, but I keep this stuff in the house so that it's room temperature always. And the same thing with the activator, the catalyst, the blue stuff. And before I use that, each time I'll massage that. I don't give any chance on that. Again, made a mistake one time of not massaging the activator, and it does separate. And then I didn't get good activation on the mud. Here you'll notice I'm going from the bottom to the top, and the reason for that is if you look carefully, you can see that the line where Pete had to weld that in, it's lower on the, it's the gap is deeper on the lower part than the upper. So right now it's not pretty, but I'm just I'm building up. I'm building to get that level eventually. But each layer, I don't want to lay on too much mud because it'll crack and break. It's just not good. It's got to be done in stages. Here, even though it looks, at first it just looks like it's a big old heapy mess, but I'm just laying the mud in there. I've got enough time before it sets just to sort of lay some in there. And this is that inner seam, the inner weld seam on this panel. And then there's this lateral one on that flatter plane on the door jamb. And again, there's a little bit of a height difference on this. You can see, so I'm just laying in some mud to get that in position and start the leveling process on this first coat.
Now, how long does this typically take to cure?
Oh, this stuff will kick off and harden up in 15 minutes, but it's not really sandable. At this temperature, I think I was probably looking at an hour to 2.
Okay.
And again, if you wait less time, there's less sanding. It's softer, so you can sand it faster. But in this case, because I want a really good strong bond, I wait. Now we're sanding here. This is a couple days later.
Yeah.
Really hard. So yes, I'm introducing more work with this method, but as an amateur professional amateur, it gives me more control. And I know that I've got a really good strong bond to work from. So I would rather go through the extra labor of more sanding than to make a mistake and sand it too early.
Right.
So that's a strategy that I use to just not have to do a bunch of redo.
Got it.
And it just works for me.
And so...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so you're using your mini sander here now.
I got the little mini sander, and the cool thing about this, even though this thing is a real air hog, it just beats my compressor to death. And I've got a 5 horsepower beast of our compressor. We call him Elvis because when he starts up, he sort of goes like, oh, ho, ho, ho. That's why I named him Elvis. Anyway, this thing is a beast. And this little gun just sucks the air and runs the hell out of the compressor. So,
yeah, that thing is always firing up.
Yep. Versus my other tools, but that little 3-inch, I can control the speed, so I use that to knock off the edges and do my first round. And then what you see there with that green sponge is that's a nice little soft contour. And what I've got, let me look on there. I think that's the white. So that is an 80 grit. So that's my first really rough, I'm just cutting this down, getting closer to where it needs to be. So I do the first speed cut with my little 3-inch air sander. And now I'm just checking to see, where are the high spots on this panel. And again, I'm not looking to fine tune this yet. I'm just building. Yeah, and that's a really good detail there where you can see there's still plenty of scratches. It's 2 or 3 rounds away from being finished, but I'm just setting in these planes, these angles, and getting that fill.
And that's kind of what you were talking about, how dividing it into planes.
Yeah, on the original video, the large part of the flat panel is one plane, and this you're looking at this is another plane. And then the part near the yellow tape is another. So I look at those flat surfaces as like zones, and then I work each of them, and then I work the corresponding joints or the radius, the little nooks and crannies.
Right. So this is round 2?
Yeah, this is round 2.
Or I guess...
And it never looks pretty when it goes on, but all I'm doing here is building. Because I'm probably going to take half of it off again.
Was this the round where we screwed up and had to take it off? I think that was, and then this was the second time around on the second run. Yeah. I've lost track.
It all runs together, folks. Like wax on, wax off.
What day is it?
My grave, like we said in one of the original videos I did with, which is a great video, my first real total project car, which was saving Anita. Got a great video on that. Great experience. Very intimidating to begin with, but man, I learned so much and had a lot of fun. But I used to say how you put it on my gravestone. You know, he thought he was done sanding. I think I'm done sanding, but
forever sanding.
Forever. Again, folks, my strategy here is I put more on than I know I'm going to need, but because I'm not a professional and I can't dial it in yet, and I just accept that, okay, I'm going to err on the side of more mud, and I'm going to have more sanding, but I'm gaining more control. And for me, that's the peace of mind that I'm looking for. That helps me to enjoy this instead of being freaked out because, you know, I under-mudded and over-sanded.
So is that block you're using, that's a rigid block or more of a soft block?
There's a very rigid block, and that's one of the Dura blocks, one of the shorter Dura blocks, but I probably have a dozen different blocks that I use for, you know, I've discovered that will be different purposes, but when I'm needing to flat this thing out and really cut, I use that really hard Dura block. Here I'm doing just a little bit more feathering now that I've knocked a lot of it down, and I'm getting a little bit closer to start dialing in those contours. Then I'll switch back a little bit with the DA. You see I'm sort of working the edges there, working the edges from the out to the in.
Yeah, and it looks like you're using really short push pulls and
yeah. I'm just dusting it and checking to see how it's how the sandpaper is biting so that I don't overcut. And I'm using about a medium speed on this thing right now. You can see how it's a little bit smoother.
So I imagine in the first and second rounds you're going through sandpapers a little bit more quickly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the other thing. At first I was very conservative. I wouldn't change the pad because I was thinking, man, I'm going to burn up that pad and I'm going to spend a ton of money on pads. But, you know, folks, it's like anything else. Buy the best quality sandpaper you can afford. Don't cheap on the sandpaper. I've tried that. It doesn't work because they burn them up. You have an inconsistent grit. Then you have extra scratches that you got to sand out. And you're just working 3 times as hard to save 50 cents on a piece of sandpaper. It's not worth it. So what I've learned on this second round here is I change my paper more frequently. And I get a better, more even cut. The job goes faster. It's just less work. Here on round 2, I'm doing the same thing I was doing on round 1. I'm building, I'm flattening. You can see how much larger, though, the repair has gotten. How much more mud there is on there.
Rinse and repeat, right?
Yep. I'm building that shape to get that final space, and I'm overbuilding so I can then cut it back, and then it lands right where I need it.
I think that was the really tricky part about that, is that some areas were in back, and then some areas protruded out, so you had to kind of blend the two.
And the natural, this inner jam, that flatter part, it's not really flat, but it's the flatter part of all of this, is not completely flat. The molding from the stamping, it has an unevenness. So I was trying to replicate that without just making it flat. It wouldn't look right.
Yeah.
Here, although it looks like I don't need mud there, that panel has a good roundness to it. And I'm trying to build and restore from that dent that was, you know, that big thump that was back there when we first got the car. I'm trying to restore that curve. Same thing here, I'm trying to build that curve in now. That's the natural part of the body. And I think this is probably the last round. So I know you're dying to ask me, Pete, but why am I working on the mud on the top side here and I'm staying away from the wheel arch at first? Now there I'm coming in and slathering on a bunch like peanut butter.
Mazda PB&J.
Yeah. And folks, I admit, yeah, if you hear a cat in the background, it's because you're hearing a cat in the background. To insert himself into everything that's going on. And I'm sure if you have pets, you understand.
Yeah. So you're coming back in the door jamb.
Yeah, here I'm just doing some more building. Now I've got what I call my big fat yellow block. And this sucker it looks like soft rubber, but it's really not. And it's great for flattening out a panel of this size where it's not too long. And I will use that again when I'm flattening out the glaze layer. Again, here right now, because it's early fill, I'm just knocking some stuff down.
I was gonna say you don't have an interface pad on that sander.
Now here I'm back to finessing again, and I think on this I probably now have. It's hard to tell with my hand going back and forth, but I think. I can't tell until I see the color of the sandpaper.
Now I noticed you were switching directions with your sanding strokes.
With the sanding strokes, I alternate. Just think like an X. I go vertical, horizontal, and in an X pattern. You never want to just stay in one direction because you'll dig a hole and it'll get uneven. It's funny how you notice that because I do that unconsciously now. You can see there's a dark light area there, so I'm just trying to flat that out right now. And you'll notice I'm not working on that wheel arch right now at all because I'm just working on the main area first and I'm going to finesse that arch later. There I'm trying to, because there's a good indentation in part of that panel there where it sort of slopes in, and I'm trying to replicate that now. That's why I have this little quarter moon
Crescent shaped
tippy sander. These things are great, man. That was the best $30 I've probably ever spent.
I feel like you say that about all your tools.
All the time. It's like, gosh, there's this tool that's just bomb-ass good, and this one has proven to be the case. There, I'm just trying to get a feel, just knock off some of those high spots and get a feel, preserve the... there we're getting to the arch. Another one of my favorite little sanders. This is a Velcro backed, and it's just like a little inch wide. It's very light, so it gives me a great deal of control. Again, one of the most useful tools with bodywork that I have. And I can work that 1 inch flat surface. That wheel arch has sort of like a 1 inch flat molding area, and it just allows me to tune that in. Little guide coat here. And now that I've got this, these contours about right, now I'm focused more on getting this panel nice and flat. Trying to get a feel for it. You'll also notice I do not have gloves on because I'm needing to feel this panel, and I can do more, not visually but tactile. You really want to feel the curves, the lumps, the imperfections in the panel.
Yeah, it's like how you were telling me about how, sometimes when you're feeling a panel, you want to actually close your eyes because...
I do, all the time.
Because visually, sometimes your eyes can trick you.
Yep. And lighting.
Yeah.
Make me think, the panel is straight, but when I feel it's like, nah. So I close my eyes and I totally go by feel.
Right. Totally.
You'll see tiny little bits of dust every once in a while. It's just a fine tune. I had very little pinholes. I was really pleased with this bodywork. Very, very few pinholes. Tiny little imperfections and inclusions, which you'll always have, which you take care of with your glaze layer. Here I'm trying to replicate that body line on the wheel arch. We're getting close though.
Yeah. It really did come out awesome.
This panel is tricky. It is not a big panel from top to bottom, and you've got that very short space between the door jamb and the wheel arch. There's just not a lot there, but there are a lot of different curves going on. At this point, for pre-glaze, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, it really replicated the original curve of the panel well.
Glazing time. Again, I'm staying away from the wheel arch here because I'm going to do that later, and that can be done as a separate piece. My focus right now is on getting a really good, consistent smear on that glaze from top to bottom of that panel.
How long does that glaze typically cure? Is that as fast as Bondo, or is it
faster?
Yeah,
it's much finer and much faster. So that can be ready to sand in 15-20 minutes.
Right.
But again, I opt for getting it, I think we're again back here a couple days later, and I'm rinse repeat with a finer grade. I'm starting with 240 on this. I'm not really cutting that down real fast.
And I think this is at the point where we were pretty much finished.
Getting close, yeah. The glaze, of course, cuts and shapes much faster than the other stuff.
So yeah, this panel was now ready for final prep and primer. So
that's all she wrote, folks.
All right, well, I guess that concludes this.
Thanks for joining us, folks. I hope we didn't bore you.
Yeah, it was a little, we were a little rough because it's the first one we've done, but let us know what you think of it. Leave a comment if you like seeing this kind of content more. Hopefully you learned something from it.
Let us know. We appreciate the feedback.
Yeah. So that is it for this Underdog Garage Raw episode. Thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate it. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you've got a comment or a question, leave it down below. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes on this project and other projects we got going on in the garage.
Don't want to miss the next steps. We're doing the pretty parts.
Yeah, the paint stuff.
Putting some paint.
So that's it for today. Have fun, stay motivated, and we will see you next time.
Bye.